Okay, everybody, this is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority, and we got another show here. This is the 27th show and going through the numbers and everything like that. And today is a show, again, this is Jason Eagle. My company is Strategic Healing. I'm your natural health authority. If you want to get a hold of my office, the number is 734-985-5891. If you want to connect to me online, you can go to, you can see me live right now on Facebook, which is my Strategic Healing Facebook. Also, you can go to YouTube, which is Jason Eagle QRA. My website is strategichealing.us. I know it's a lot of information. The number to call in today is 313-272-5600. That's 313-272-5600. And that's a way for you to get some questions. And today we've got the system back up and running. And so I'd love to hear from you if you are so interested. But today is a show that I will say it's going to be far out there. This is the far out there day, which is actually far out there is actually far in there, right? And this is a show that's going to hit close to home. This is a show about health, right? And so there's a lot of different factors about health. A lot of times, the first thing that most people think, which is I'm being healthy, I wasn't healthy, now I'm getting healthy, which is diet, right? Usually the things that we can affect, which is the things that we can do. You can change what you eat. You can take supplements, and whole food supplements are basically, I like to change what I eat, but there's no possible way I could eat that much, and I need that much. So when you take whole food supplements, they basically are super concentrated so that you can then get those nutrients, and especially the minerals. Today's show is going to be about energy and about the basis of health and what we know about health. And again, everything can be calculated to energy, and in a human being, pretty much everything can be, it's the critical factor, which is what are your minerals. A lot of times people kind of forget this, but again, it's the first thing that is done if you're in an emergency situation, which is they alter your minerals. They give you a sodium drip because a lot of times your salt is too low and you're in a panic. And see, salt and all these other dissolved minerals are what makes your electrical field. It's what makes your heart pump. And when your salt minerals in particular are too low, your heart's not going to work correctly, your immune system doesn't work correctly, your blood flow, all of these different things. So it's one of the simplest things to do, but it has such powerful effects if we have a deficiency and if we um, don't have those balances correct. When the doctor takes your blood, they're looking at some of the top things we're looking at is we're looking at your sodium, we're looking at your calcium, we're looking at your potassium, we're looking at your magnesium. These are basic minerals of which these are what batteries are made out of. We're looking at iron, we're looking at copper, these different types of things. This is what batteries. So the analogy is you are a walking battery. Well, similar to, I'll use this, which is, if you remember, like, kids, you can do scientific experiments. And I know, there's a bunch of different scientific experiments that kids will do for whether it be the science fair and stuff. And one of the things that was in my day, and I'm sure it's still around too, is a clock potato. How do you make a clock? You just plug these wires into a potato and then now the clock works. So you plug it into a lemon. How's it possible? It's because the minerals that are inside this potato creates a current, creates a charge. How's that any different than what's in your body? It's not. It's exactly the same. Is you are these electromagnetic fields, and that's what your brain is, and that's what every single system is running on. But in the chemical basis, in the physical world, there has to be these charges have to go through a fluid. That's the same thing as like a battery that's in your car. It's this box that's full of liquid with these two posts sticking in it, which is a positive and negative, and they are literally metal rods that are hanging in this fluid. And inside this fluid is you have these other metal plates, and that's a battery, and it produces electricity, it produces charge, and you can charge it and you can discharge it. Well, that's not much different. That is, the basics of what a human being is. And Now, like I said, this is my practice is about looking at your health and what are the things that we can do. And when people are having problems, meaning, let's just bring this down to basic, which is too much inflammation in my body, too much pain in my body, my blood flow doesn't work correctly, my brain doesn't work correctly, all these things. This muscle keeps swelling, or this muscle is very weak, or just take your pick of what are the things that any person in the physical body, um, if it's not working correctly, what do you do about it? Well, if it's a broken bone, you set the bone and you put a cast on it so that it can heal. If you, for instance, have deficiencies, fix your diet. If you are ingesting poisons, which is a lot of times that is a lot of the big problem, is you're eating a poison or you're exposed to a poison, but you don't know it. Well, today we're going to get into what are some of the other things that are, there's the internal environment and then there's the external environment, meaning does your environment, does your home matter? Does place matter? And if this is one of these variables, which is where I live, where I sleep, where I spend these hours of the day, what is the environment? Just like how much food are you eating, how much liquid are you consuming, or how much are you not? Or even, I talk about sleep, for instance. If you don't sleep enough, your body will not. It's a way for a person to go crazy, and it's a way for a person to literally die. Is if a person is sleep deprived long enough, the body will. So sleep is one of these things that's built into our system, and that's what I'm talking about. Is let's consider it all essentially like a supplement, which is I don't have it, make this change, bring it in, or take it out, and what difference does it make? Well, that's what health is all about. Is if you don't feel the way that you want to or did, um, what do you change about it? Well, today's show is really about things that, like, we don't live in the environment that we used to, but even when we used to, let's say we go back to way back in history, before there was electricity, before there was what's called electromagnetic fields, there have always been electromagnetic fields. And we live in electromagnetic fields. Just like, for instance, you live in a house that may be full of mold, and that's what's getting into your lungs and making you sick. So you're breathing this stuff, or you live in a house that has, say, radon, which is that's a basement that is emitting these electromagnetic or radioactive, and so these are environmental things. Every year there are people that get what's called Legionnaires disease, which is this really bad, gets into your lungs, and it can create pneumonia, it can create fluid in the lungs, just like what we're seeing right now. But it comes because over winter, the people's AC units, radiostaticky, okay. Um, so basically, the water that gets inside, for instance, what is it? Your AC unit. If it sits around too long, then it can get sick and it can become like a swamp. And what happens is when that old water sits in there and then suddenly the air conditioner turns on for the first time of the year, it just spits out all of this stuff that literally people's lungs, not too unlike pollen, meaning certain people, but see, these are like bacterias and molds and things like that literally are a toxin. So you're breathing these toxic gases. Okay, well, what if for instance, the invisible things that you couldn't see, what if those are the things that are the environment, your house? Okay, now we're going to get in later to that, but let's get into some of the basics in terms of the body, some of the things that we know about the body, and let's get into some studies that I have here that, this is what I do based upon these things, but this is, if you want to get it proven to you, okay? Um, Things that inside your body can be broken down to what's called charge distribution, and voltage, and all of these different things. Okay, so voltage, which means you can actually test your what's called pH. Your pH, which is you can test your saliva, you can test your blood, just like testing a fish tank or the pool water. They're testing the pH, and if it's too acidic, then these things happen. And if it's too alkaline, then these things happen. But if it's in that zone where it likes to be, so the blood likes to be right around 7.0, right around the middle in terms of where the pH is, meaning how much alkaline, how much acid is in there. And then we can get towards more acid types of things. And what has been known is that when you are too acidic, the cells become prone to becoming toxic on certain levels. So we know that a bunch of diseases grow and are really just a manifestation of the pH being off. You're too acidic in the bloodstream, but too basic in the stomach. So that's why we talk about adding like hydrochloric acid and making sure that you're taking enough salt and things like that so that your stomach produces enough hydrochloric acid. Your stomach, when you eat food, should be acidic. Okay, which then means then if your stomach is acidic, if you're normal and everything is like you were, child, the way it was, you can digest like a horse, and your blood, if you tested your blood, which is your organs are healthy and you feel good and you have little pain and all these things, your blood is going to be more alkaline because your stomach is acidic. But as we get older and we have been eating cooked food and we don't take enough salt, and there's all these different factors that our stomach acid goes down, then what happens is as the stomach becomes more alkaline than it should be, then what happens is the bloodstream becomes more acidic than it should be. It's like a teeter-totter. So, one of the basis of natural health is changing your pH, having more of an alkaline pH inside your bloodstream, inside your cells. And that is what protects the cells. That's the state that it really wants to be. Now, there's another correlation, which is pH actually has voltage. So like testing the voltage on a battery, can you test voltage? Yes. Okay. So voltage, in terms of what we know, is that, for instance, pH that is what's called an electron stealer, meaning it steals electrons from which is acidic. This is what free radicals are. This is where damage happens in the body, and we know that, like for instance, cancer and these other things, is you can test them, and they are going to be more acidic, which is the pH is 0 to 6.9. Now, when the bloodstream in the body becomes more pH 7.1 to 14, that's an electron donor, meaning the cells, actually the little atoms in the cells, get more energy, get more spin energy. Okay, and that's 7.1 to 14, and that quenches free radicals. Alkaline quenches free radicals. That's why people are drinking alkaline waters, because they're trying to get rid of some of the bad effects. It introduces what's called a negative pull. It allows for you to have more negative ions, which is when we test healthy cells, they are more negatively charged than positively charged. And this is more constructive in terms of it repairs damage. So being able to get these changes in voltage in your body, that would be important. And we know that, like I said, is if we don't have enough of the pH inside of our bloodstream, we have the right bloodstream, we can change that externally. Okay. But sometimes what's really going on inside the body, how did it get so far off? One of the factors is okay, let's say I've not been eating the right foods. Let's say I've been eating just a standard American diet of just tons of junk and not very good minerals and all this other stuff, right? So that's how it happened, okay? There's other things that can rob our body of minerals, not just that we didn't replace it, but stress on the body. So let's say the body has infection going on. It's going to eat up minerals because it needs your immune system to provide. So if there's constant damage in your body, if you're sleeping on a bed of nails every night and you wake up, with bleeding sores, then obviously something's picking at you. And that's so the analogy is that's why I go after, let's say, viruses and bacteria, because see, these are things that are your immune system is working on, and it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. And if you eat really well, sometimes that's nowhere near enough to cover it. But let's say you're just a regular person and you eat really bad, and of course you're not replacing what's coming out of. Now, there's some other things, which is these unseen world, which is the environments that we live into. And these things are what's called electromagnetic fields, EMFs, which is we live in modern houses, and modern houses have all of these energies going through them. Back in the day, if you lived in an old log cabin that was, put together and they didn't even use nails, there was no metal there, and so and it was right on the ground and stuff like that. They're really, really healthy homes and built out of stone and things like that, which is these are things that resonate really healthy to you. And in fact, if there's waves of these electromagnetic waves that are coming through the house, what it does is it grabs onto them and it brings them back down to the ground like a lightning rod so that it doesn't go through your body. Well, long gone are those days. We live in days now where we live in a house that is built on a foundation that has these buried inside the concrete are these grids of iron, and it's in a particular grid pattern, which that alone is kind of like an antenna, and that's built in. And then we have walls that are behind us that has copper wires that have electricity that are sending these magnetic or electromagnetic waves, and then we are inside a house where things are going through. So for instance, let's say we have Wi-Fi, we have radio waves, we have microwaves, we have all these things that are going through your body and interacting with your body. And like standing in a windstorm, these things could be buffeting your body and buffeting you on a cellular energy level. Because if you saw inside your body, what we call free radical damage is very similar to, like, Spock in Star Trek, which is when he got into the nuclear reactor and then it was just tearing his body apart. Is because if you zoomed in and you saw the actual DNA structure, which is that every cell is the DNA structure, these ladders were being split apart and you were falling apart from the inside out, from the smallest to the highest. That's what free radical damage, of which, let's say, sunshine, if you don't have enough minerals and your body's not healthy enough, uh, you get skin cancer because the sunshine is damaging your cells and you can't protect it. So that's the idea of putting on some UVB protection and things like that. This is what I'm talking about. Is we know that the sun can do damage, but the sun can also do good, meaning it makes you produce vitamin D. So there's goods and they're bad. Okay. So, but really the thing is there really isn't bad. It's all just, do you know how to handle it? Can you position yourself correctly? So that's why, again, not everybody in natural health, not everybody needs to be completely covered in a skin protectant, something like that. If you are healthy and you're young and you have good minerals, you want to go out and have good exposed skin. Take those sunglasses off and get some of the sun. Don't stare directly in the sun, but it's going right in, and it actually, if you're strong enough, it actually makes you healthier. We know this. When you were younger, you felt really good on those days that you spent all day by the seaside or whatever out in the sun. Yeah, maybe you got a sunburn, but if you're healthy, the sunburn doesn't last very long and you actually feel really, really good. So vitamin D that we produce, it makes us healthier. Well, we created that from these energies. Um, if you want to get a little bit more understanding of some of this stuff, there's a guy that I really recommend, and he's very, very deep. He's called the Tattooed Monkey. His name is Ken Wheeler, and on YouTube, he's got a channel called Theoria Apophasis. It's Theoria, and then the next word is Apophasis. And what that refers to is his old Greek terminology of knowledge, of truth, and what he does a lot of camera stuff, but he really goes into magnetics. He really explains the physics and and then uses magnets and with these things called magnetic film, where you can't see it in a magnetic field. It's invisible. But if you put this little piece of plastic that has these little liquid inside there that is basically little tiny magnetized things, then it makes these shapes where you can actually see what the magnetic field is. And he gets into and I'll get in a second of why this is important, which is, the thing about the way that the DNA and every single cell and you from the smallest all the way to the biggest is you're built on these architectures, and the architecture of life is one and the same, which is when life is really happy or healthy and strong, the magnetic field of the cells We're dealing with things what's called space and counter space. We're dealing with, if you think about a magnet, you got a north pole and a south pole, and at the center is this imaginary line of, like, that's the black hole. That's what's called the plane of inertia. So every magnetic field, again, a cell of your body has a polarity to it. There's a north pole and a south pole, and in the middle is this black hole field where, if you kind of picture what every single thing looks like, including even subatomic particles, is they essentially look like this, which is, it looks like two, like an hourglass shape. Okay. Think about an hourglass where you got the sand that goes to a pinch point, the sand at the top, and then that falls down into the bottom. That's an hourglass, right? And the sand is falling down the hole. That hole is like a vortex spin, because that's where gravity is. And it empties from one side and goes into the other side. Well, magnetic is, imagine you have one of those where at the center it goes both ways, which is, if the center of gravity is not only pulling things down but also pulling things up, that's what a magnetic field looks like, is because the center of what's called the plane of inertia, which is centrifugal divergence, is where it all happens. That's where all life happens. That's why you see plants that they spin in what's called this Fibonacci sequence, which is, it's the actual spin dynamics of how cells are. We also know that as cells lose energy, as cells get sicker and things like that, something happens to that field. It weakens, and that field is losing charge, and that field is losing energy. So, like fixing the body with, like, say, nutrients and things like that, can you also fix the body energetically? Yes. So, this is where we get into some of the other things that I do, which is, I treat people's bodies, and we treat also people's environments and homes as your body. Could you fix your home? Does environment matter? I don't know about you, but I've been all over places of the world, and I've gone camping and things like that, and I've stayed in certain hotels. And certain hotels that I've stayed in is like, I slept like junk, and it really, and it's not all explained because of just travel. And then there's other places where I slept fabulously, especially places where I went in tents and I slept outside. And even though my back was on hard ground and I was kind of like grumbly because my back hurt a little bit, oh my goodness, I slept like a rock. Like when you remember, like, you're a child, when you first wake up and you're like, where am I? And the dreams that you have are so powerful and so strong, and you feel so rested and so energized and so special that day. Yes, there's something to these places. Okay. So one of the things that we get into is there any studies on these things? Is there any type of thing that, is it just all in our mind, or is it really something? So I'm going to take a commercial break, and when we get back, we'll get into that. Today's show is far out there and far in there. So we'll be right back. All right. Okay, this is Jason Eagle, and we're back, and we're going to get into. We're talking about energy today. We're talking about one of the other things that I do to help people, which is I help to figure out what your environment looks like, and if there's things in your electromagnetic environment that is making you sick or that is keeping you from being as healthy as you can be. What can we do about it? Well, first of all, let's get into. Is there, again, like I said, some studies on these things, and is there, well, let me tell you about Sweden. Sweden's a whole country that has basically figured this stuff out. If as you are older, you remember like computers. Okay, let's say computers, let's say back in the late 1990s, just at the beginning of the internet. Okay, if you worked in an office, you know that you got computer screens that were what's called the Swedish standard, meaning that what they found is that there's a lot of electromagnetic frequency radiation that comes out of these devices, comes out of your screens, comes out of your computer. And Sweden is a country where all of their electrical lines are buried underground. There's no overhead lines and things like that. And they're very protected because they've done a lot of studies on this and show that the things that are coming out of these things can make people sick, can really affect them. So what they've done is they created what was called the Swedish standard, upon now which like all of the computers are measured on that, which is now they're just doing the bottom basics and they're not really doing it enough, but it's something better than it's polluting you. Now remember all the studies about, well, what do cell phones do? Like cell phones cause brain cancer. The studies that were shown on that they're inconclusive, but there's tons of studies that were done in terms of electromagnetic frequencies and cell phone that affect things like glucose, that affect things like your hormones. Let me get into a study right here, which is the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, suggests that 50 minutes spent on a cell phone disrupts brain glucose. This is based upon a study that somebody was doing and really looking at things like Alzheimer's. Okay, is there some connection to Alzheimer's to electromagnetic frequencies? Okay, there's some really good suggestions because okay, if it 50 minutes on a cell phone or 50 minutes or even on a cordless phones are actually worse than cell phones. Okay, it disrupts brain glucose metabolism. Okay, so it changes how glucose is in your brain. Glucose is utilized to feed brain cells. Alzheimer's disease may develop in areas where there's excess glucose. So where excess glucose permeates, meaning there's more sugars that are stored in certain parts of the brain because of the electromagnetic waves that are hitting it, these areas of this brain become insulin resistant, causing problems, meaning causing type 3 diabetes type of things, or basically local in your brain causing a problem where the cells don't work correctly. And then that makes it prone to degradation from Alzheimer's. Now, grandma and grandpa, again, they're not on the cell phones, right? And they were born before a lot of these. So how come they're getting it right now? Well, if you do the studies and you look at way great 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 grandpa before this stuff, the levels of Alzheimer's were nowhere near what they are. When we first electrified houses and things like that, so when you build a new house right now, you actually have to have electrician come in and measure it for code. And what they measure is things called stray voltage. They use what's called a stray voltage meter because if the voltage that's coming outside of the wall, right, is this huge bubble field that everything kind of vibrates and it's literally vibrating your cells. If you're sleeping in a bed that with your head against that wall, and let's say they didn't change it, they didn't have this code 20 years ago, and grandma and grandpa have been sleeping with their head on that wall for 40 years, this damage can be happening as you're sleeping, right? Because it's coming in through the walls, because your walls are electrified. And now you put on top of that the Wi-Fi or the 5G that's going through there. There's some suggestions that this 5G has had a role in the crisis that we're dealing with right now because it affects how viruses grow, how they get into cells. It affects what's called the lipids, the cellular membrane. It increases cellular permeability. So and there's multiple different types of 5Gs. When the bad 5Gs gets activated, there's some correlative studies that say those are the cities that where they unveiled this new 5G, where it's like boom, they got hit much, much harder, and the level of disease was much, much higher there. And the really bad cases of the disease was because it affected the cell's ability to not protect itself. It took down its force fields, and now things can get in. And if it's related to electromagnetic frequencies and things like that, there's definitely studies that show this. There's another really neat study in terms of what things matter. There's this Polish cow study. This is, put your socks on for this one. This is kind of cool. There was a Polish study which is research on zones of geomagnetic field disturbances, magnetic anomalies, right? In Poland, okay, there were 309 cows that were kept in stalls, which is 91 by 24 meters, okay? Cows kept in these three stalls, okay, suffered. So there were other stalls, but there were these particular three stalls. Whatever cow you put in there, they got ill and they got sick, and even but then when they moved them out of those stalls, they became well again. And if they took some cows, healthy cows, and put them in that stall, they would get sick. Okay. The three unhealthy cows were moved to other cow stalls, and they completely recovered. Okay, so when they rotated them out, what they did, then they did a measurement, and they found that the Earth's geomagnetic fields exceeded 34,000 nanotesla. Okay, and what it did to those cows is it lowered the trace elements such as zinc, copper, and iron, and low iron in their body. So the cows that were in these fields, what it did is it changed the minerals, especially the iron, and they got anemia. Okay, but when you pulled them out of that field, they were fine and they recovered. So and this was just what's called geomagnetic, meaning this was a barn where there was no electricity. This is just stuff coming from the earth. We know that, like, for instance, people living in certain cities where there's certain places where there's, let's say, iron deposits under their house, and clay that holds on to, let's say, lead and things like that. These are the areas where people are going to have a lot higher levels of radon. And radon is these radioactive waves that spill into your basement. And then, let's say, your furnace is pumping those airs. There's been studies that show that children that slept closer in cribs, closer to where the vent was, where they had radon gas, that was the child that got sick. But the kid that was at the other side, they were twins, that was the other side, didn't get that same illness, right? So these, again, there's an unseen world that's harming me. What do we do about it? So if you got radon gas, you have a radon remediation, and they come in and there's radon tests that you can get and things like that. I do recommend, and especially in a lot of places here in Michigan, get a radon test and find out if those things are, and that's an easy fix. But there's other things in terms of what can I do to change some of these dynamics? Well, one of the big dynamics is, for instance, where your house is positioned. You can get a compass out and you can find out where is it, on north, south, east, west. Where is it? Okay, my front door is facing this way. Now go into the bedroom, and when you lay down in your bed, which area is your head facing? And you can test this, but what has been shown for most people is that if their head is facing North Pole, and people go, I don't know if I believe in these energies. Okay, that's why your compass points north, and it's a compass, a special thing. Now, I'll tell a story. I remember when I was a kid, one of these things that I think it was second grade or third grade, I don't remember, and we did have like a science fair. My dad showed me, he said, okay, kid, go into this, and what you do is you take like a sewing needle or like a regular needle, and you can rub it on a magnet or you can rub it on silk, right? And then you drop that. In fact, you can even do this with a pine needle. If you ever got lost outside, you can take a pine needle and rub it on some silk or the inside, like, of your jacket, and then take a glass of water and then drop it. So this is a metal needle. And what you do is you drop it in, and the needle will point towards where north is, which is, there's this energy. You don't feel it, but it's permeating everything. Okay. So one of the things is, if you sleep with your head facing north, that it pulls energy out of you. And in fact, it can disrupt sleep. So what do you do about it? You can turn and face your head south. When I lived in a house, and sometimes what you can do is you can rearrange your bedroom and say, okay, the bed really should go this way. Well, I had a bedroom one time when I first found, see, I've been doing this stuff for many, many years, and I've noticed the difference between sleeping my head this way, and it makes a huge difference. And one bedroom that I had where it was like I couldn't move the bed over, so I slept backwards on the bed for all the time that I lived in that house, and I slept, great. And sometimes you don't sleep all that great, but for the most part, I didn't have an energy that was going through me. So bed placement is something that you can experiment with and get a compass out, and if you head points north, then also another thing you can do which is look where your bed is. And if your bed is up against the wall, if there is for instance, um, an outlet right there, and if you put your head down and it's behind, let's say, the bed back or whatever, move your head away from where that is and see if you sleep better, see if you feel more energy, see if you don't feel, because a lot of times if you're sleeping next to these magnetic fields, you don't want to do that. So again, like a supplement, like a change, like an exercise. I wasn't doing this. Now I'm doing this. Does it make a difference? And I know so many people that it makes a huge difference, which is just by changing where your bed position is. This is one of the reasons why I bring up grounding a lot. Again, there's things that I can do in my practice, which is there's devices that we can put on your phone. There's things that I can do to your house. One of the things that I do is what's called Vastu. And Vastu is essentially it's the science, the Ayurvedic science. That's the name for the Ayurvedic. Ayurvedic means India. So from India, the ancient Indians, which is actually the ancient Indians, have the oldest medical Ayurvedic medicine. Then there's Chinese medicine. Well, Ayurvedic, in terms of its actual study, which is there's thousands of years old medical books. They're old, what's called Ayurvedic medicine, which is they were way ahead of everybody, including things like surgery, and they were recorded the very first ones to do blood transfusions, and this is thousands of years ago. So they have a lot of history of this, and what they have a science called Vastu, which is there's definitely what you do with your body, but what do you do with your home? Is there some building energetics? Is there some how I build my house this way, the way that I put it? If I say put my bedroom here, if I put my kitchen here, if I put my office here, or I want to do my best thinking and stuff like that. Western architecture just throws anything anywhere, right? And doesn't really concern itself with this energy. Well, Vastu is about the building energetics of if you built it this way as opposed to this way, does it make a difference? Yes, it makes a huge difference. And now with American Vastu, which is my house is already built this way, what am I going to do? There's definitely things that you can do to fix the energetics of a house. And why would you want to do that? Because it can make a huge difference. I've had people that have had a number of different conditions that we did everything and nothing worked, but then we changed stuff in the house. And like, oh yeah, I sleep better, I digest better, these pains went away, I can think much better now, but because I didn't know that this is what was happening to my house. I didn't know that this was happening in my environment. There are things that we can bring in the body in terms of whether it be stones and things. Now, don't hear me on stones that I'm talking about occult magic and stuff like that. It's not what we're talking about, because see, the thing is what are stones? This is what your battery is made out of. This is what your cell phone battery is made out of. If you're hearing me on the radio, this is what your radio is made out of. These silicone chips that make your devices, and your battery that's a lithium ion battery. All these is these essentially ground up stones. So a lithium ion battery, which is what every device that you have, and in fact, even a Tesla car, it's basically these ground up different minerals and dirts that are positioned and put together and sandwiched together, kind of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It holds energy. It stores charge, because these ground up minerals, if you see them on electromagnetic frequencies, they store charges and they store electromagnetic energy and all these different types of things. Well, I'm talking about using these things in your home and in your body. So one of the things that you can do, okay, and I'm going to tell you that I am definitely very sensitive to this stuff, because if I talk to my phone, and I've been having an iPhone, and I've gone through all the different, I think I started with like an iPhone 3, I'm up to what, an iPhone 6 or 7 or something like that. I can tell you that I don't like being on the cell phone very long. And I have some devices on my phone that make it better, but it's still, my hand will burn. And I feel like my hand is burning, and I change it back and forth. But what I've recently noticed is that what it is in particular with my cell phone is when it fills up with data. So when I buy a brand new phone, when I get an upgrade and it's not full of all my pictures and stuff like that, it feels all right. And if I'm on it for a couple hours, my ear will get hot, and I kind of feel my hand gets hot. But if I, for instance, if like my phone is right now, it's getting full of data, as soon as I pick it up, and if I'm holding it for anything more than, it feels like my hands are burning. It's weird. It's strange. But if I run my hands under some water, or if I'm driving in the car and I stick my hand out the window for a little while, it or put my hands in the dirt. If I put my hands in the dirt, or let me tell you, one of these stones is what's called shungite. Shungite is a material. Shungite is this natural stone that's out there. It's a black type of stone, and you can get big ones, you can get little ones, and you can fake ones, you can get real ones. So I recommend you getting real ones. Well, what is shungite? Shungite is one of these things that it has its healing power compounds because it contains what's called 60 carbon atoms, which is what's called these carbon molecules that are called fullerenes or fullerenes, which is named after the scientist Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller was this physicist that, if you remember back in the 1970s, we built a lot of geodesic domes and things like that. That was him. He invented what's called the geodesic domes. And you had many buildings. Like, I went to a high school, and our rival was Eisenhower, and there were these big dome buildings, and they were built upon the mathematics that he came up with. And what he came up with is physics named what's called buckyballs after him. Is when you get into really, really deep physics, in terms of deep into the atoms, there are these carbon balls that they form together, and they look like little soccer balls, right? And the shungite is made out of these things, and they become what's called a free radical sponge. We've been testing, and what it does is it soaks up free radicals. So the discovery that fullerenes or fullerenes, when absorbed into the body, behave as powerful long-acting antioxidant. Well, you don't have to ingest them. We're talking about putting them in your pocket. We're talking about if you spend a lot of time on the computer and your ears buzzing and your hands feel hot, coming home and getting a chunk of some shungite and holding on to it. You can get like these little round balls, and like, say, a person that has had, and again, I feel fine. My hands don't feel bad. I don't notice any difference, but try it. Try some shungite after you've been on technology for a long time, and it literally makes you feel better. There are some grounding techniques that you can do for your bed, which are basic, simple, which is feed a wire outside your wall, a copper wire outside your wall, that goes and connects to, let's say, a copper rod that goes down into the ground. And then that wire goes into your bed, which is, most people have a coil mattress. And again, these coils that you're on top of, these metal coils, anytime you coil it, oopsie, I've got something going on here. I don't know what's going on. Okay, there we go. We're back here. We're there? Okay. All right. Sorry, there's a little interruption of something else kind of coming. But anyways, I'm sorry. Let me get back to my clock. Okay. So getting back to the fullerene research is that putting your hands on some of these things when you've spent a lot of time in, say, these environments, it pulls these charges out of your body. It sucks these negative ions or positive ions and sucks these harmful things outside of your body so that they don't hurt you. And what actually, it feeds energy, and it stops your energy from blocking. That's why I say it's very simple to go out, and it's very easy to discount things like grounding. But I dare you to try it. Again, take your shoes off and go and especially on a day you're feeling bad, right? You got a little bit of a cold, or you just feel depressed or something like that. Take your shoes off and go out and put your feet on the bare ground where there's some grass growing, because there's life in there and there's energy in there. And do it for about 10, 20 minutes. And almost everybody reports, you know what, I feel better. I really do. I feel a lot better. This is something that This is not just to be taken lightly. And I'm telling you, there's some huge studies on major medical universities that are really looking into this. Could it be as simple as changing your charge? People that live in a house that has, let's say, forced air heat, where the humidifier is broken. Or let's say I lived in a house one time where we had a wood stove, and if you forget to put water on, if there's not enough water in the middle of winter um, when it's very dry, what happens is that's when you then start building up electrical charge or static charge, and that's where you zap everybody. Well, take a person when they're full of static charge and tell me, how are you thinking? How do you feel? And most people kind of go, I just feel really out of sorts and my brain feels fuzzy and stuff like that. And then you put some water into the air and get the humidity back down, and I feel a lot better, and I'm not zapping myself on everything. Because what's happening is, if you build up too many positive ions, your whole electromagnetic field doesn't work correctly. So that's why it's so important to not have too dry a heat in your house, especially in the wintertime, because it can really not only dry out your lungs, but also it affects how every system of your body works. Because when there's enough moisture in the air, you get a balance between these charges. So could it be just as simple as these charges? Could it be simple as just making some changes into our environment, right? Yes, it is. And so that's one of the things that I do, which is I can come out to your house. Right now, we can actually even have you through a FaceTime or a Zoom or a one of these platforms, basically take your camera phone and go around your house, and we'll go, okay, we'll do this here. I'll send you some materials and guide you. If I can't come out to your house, I can still help you by going, oh yeah, look at there, over there. Let's do this here. Let's do this here. And okay, your bed's right here. Let's make a change. And here's a compass, and we'll figure out where it is. These things are as simple, but they really can matter. And it's one of the why this is holistic practitioner. If you listen to like a lot of the old Indian doctors, the Indian practitioners, is I remember there was a show called oh, I can't think of the Northern Exposure, and one of the shaman doctor basically said, these modern doctors, I don't know how they can figure it out like in 15 minutes with you in the office. Like my masters taught me, my doctor like taught me, you have to go and live in a person's house for a couple of weeks. Like, you got to see what their environment's like and stuff like that. Maybe that's what's making them sick. It's true. Is there something in your environment that's making you sick? And it's just, you need to make some adjustments, and it can now put more, instead of robbing you of energy, it's putting energy into your body. Yes, there are things that we can do that do this. And so coming up even too with what you would call, let's say, a health plan, which is a big part of what I do, is going through your itemized list, which is, okay, food is here. Yeah, you might want to change this, and here's boom, boom, boom. Okay, your organ systems. Okay, you need these supplements for this organ. Okay, energetic field, in terms of, you have an old injury that was not repaired and you blew some circuits. That's where we get into the mud packs. Okay, long term. Okay, your house, which is, okay, can we come to your house and optimize things? Well, real long-term plan gets into, well, what if you're going to live longer and you're going to be a lot stronger, and we're all going to come through this. What if, do you really want to live in the city? I have to live in the city because that's my work is. Well, work has changed right now, so we're coming up to an opportunity, and for some people, the actual long-term goal is to, the city and the apartment and the condo, it can never be made perfect for me. So let's move out to the country. Let's move to a place where I can get some land, and where I can get some, grow some stuff, but also have where I'm closer to nature, where I get more fresh air and these types of things. Can these things matter? Yes, they can. And there's many people where I can help you with this and help you with this, but I can't change this apartment complex that is just full of just smog, electromagnetic fields, and literally smog in terms of too many people. And now, before this, virus happened, I have to just do what I have to do. But, this thing in businesses and in life has made a way, which is, you know what, I guess I need to figure this out. I guess that this does matter. And so, like, the big buildings now are kind of going, well, we had all these cubicles, so forget the cubicles. Like, we're going to have people spread out instead of, like, can of sardines. Is we need to spread them out. So if we work at a company where a bunch of people on the phones, they have to be at least 10 feet away from each other, and you can't have as many people. These are the things that we're going to start going into. Environment matters. So even to the point, which is, let's move the headquarters out of this city and let's move it out in the country. Let's move it where we have more fresh air. Let's move it where we can keep people, not only for this in terms of close contact, but in terms of, if you were just being honest about what's healthy. Now this gets us into, I want to pass on another guy. He's got a YouTube channel. His name is Dan Winter, and he's a physicist that he actually did some work for NASA and stuff like that. But he's all about these electromagnetic charges and things like that. And he has these different suggestions, which just is true. You can take a building, again, if you're going to build, so this is his big thing. Just if you're going to build a hospital, you want people to be healthy. And in fact, you want the building to make you healthier. But if you build a building, for instance, made out of metal, and you make it out of metal box, is that healthy? No, it's really not healthy, because it's like putting your body inside what's called a Faraday cage, which is, it blocks the healthy energies. Now, can this be measured? Absolutely, which is it's as simple as this. If you were going to build a building, how do you know it gives life? Take a seed and try and germinate a seed in there. Take a seed and put it in some dirt and some water and water it. And if it grows and forms a plant, you know that it gives life. But if it basically won't grow and won't germinate, then no. And what you find is, in, like, say, a metal box or a standard type of hospital or office building, is even if you build a model of it where it's just a small scaled model using some of the same materials, if you can tweak what the materials are made out of, and you can tweak what the exact design is then you can take one that's actually killing the seed or not allowing it to live, to, if we make this adjustment, instead of making a metal box here, we do it this by this by this, and we then put some, say, granite at the bottom and some stone and blah blah blah. Or even better, let's say we build an old hospital out of natural materials, then, and be very careful about the electromagnetic frequencies and the Wi-Fi that comes through here. If this thing germinates life, then we know that it will give life to your body. So he basically saying, like, if you are a architect, how do you get paid? You only get paid is if you build a building or design a building that gives life. If it doesn't give life, if it won't let the seed germinate, or even take a plant and you put it in it and it makes that plant sick, no, we don't put money into that, because it's a counterintuitive to what we want to do, especially with health, which is we want to give you more life, and we want to take away the things that's robbing you of life. So, place matters, materials matters, it materializes. And if you want to materialize health and increase energy, and what is health? It's as simple as more energy. And what is energy? It has a better charge, meaning, like a cell phone that's going to last you all day long, without having to stick it back in the wall, is if it's fully charged. And now, even better is, what about a cell phone that's able to generate energy from the energy that's all around it? Meaning, I don't have to plug it into anything. We do have these charging ports, which is, they make new cell phones, which you don't even have to put a wire. You just put it on this plate. It's because it's now vibrating inside of a field that it's generating energy to it without plugging in a wire. The next technology is it just does that in your pocket. Okay, so we put a lot of emphasis on technology, but we forget that we are the technology. We need technology. And again, this is simple, which is, it was already figured out. Nature has this. So one of these long-term goals is if you have enough resources and you have enough effort and interest, will change everything about your life and make it better. And for some people, that I can't move away from this place, but I make sure that I go X amount of times a year to these places. And every state that you live has places that you can go to. Is you go out for a hike out here and do some grounding here, or you go and stand by this waterfall, and people go, I don't know if that works. If you feel better for going to the beach or going to the woods or something like that, That's all the evidence that you need. And I can tell you there's a lot of real science behind this evidence, which is, it's just not all in your mind. And even if it was, it doesn't matter because that's what works. So, but as I said, there's some real science and evidence to how this stuff works. And what that means is science is that means you can take this situation and apply these things, just like a manual to how do I make this thing work? Well, if your engine is broken, you pull the manual out and you understand it and can follow it, you can fix it. You can essentially rebuild it if you needed to, because it tells you how everything works and how everything's put together. This essentially is like uncovering the manual. I mean, everybody, basically says, we were never given the manual on life, just like parents say this. You weren't given the manual on how to raise a kid. Well, that's debatable. It is debatable because there's common sense, which is, and common sense is not very common. It's very precious. And that's one of the things that people can agree on. Yeah, if you just kind of use some common sense, it looks like there's a manual that's built in. But some of the other manuals, which is, okay, it's just basically on, does it have the right minerals? Does it have these too few minerals? Does it have too many of these minerals? Does it have, in particular, the definite ingredients of the cellular energy, which is, like I said, sodium, potassium. Then we get into things like protein. We get into things like fats. We get into the things like glucose, which is what you eat food for and everything like that. So, because sometimes it's not even that I'm not eating it correctly. You can have people that do everything perfectly, and they're still not healthy because they don't absorb it well. There's something that's not, it's how it processes. It's not what you eat, but it's how you digest it, how you assimilate it. That's what it's really all about. It's not what you eat, because people can eat it and it doesn't make a difference. So sometimes we have to change some of these things that fixes those things. And this show, like I said, is about the next level, next step, which is, are these energies that I live in? And again, like I said, people say, I don't believe it. Take any person and have them do that little trick with a pin, and then put it in water, and it will point north to every single person. It's not debatable to whether you believe it or not. That means there's a true force that's running through all of our bodies. And this is a force that doesn't matter. And if you line up against it, it can not help you. And if you line up with it, it can help you. So figuring out these things about your body, that seems kind of like just common sense. Seems kind of like these are the things. But again, people don't understand, and we have a society that has blocked us from truly understanding the environment that we live in. They think, this kid's on this laptop for 10 hours. It's fine. It's not a big deal. Okay, look at how they act, right? Just like we know that content matters, which is if you let them sit watching certain types of cartoons, they're going to act a certain way, meaning, are they going to be violent? Are they going to be a little bit more horsey or whatever? Yes, these things can matter. So, but again, is it also just the electromagnetic fields? If they sit, is there a possibility that having a certain type of laptop sitting on your lap as a child is going to affect their fertility rates? It's going to make if they're a boy, it's going to make the sperm infertile, or if the girl, it's going to make their eggs infertile. There are some studies that show this, and you would want to know that, because these kids are sitting with this stuff on their face, and it can be very, very harmful. Now, are some things that we can do to make up for that? Yes. And are there some things that we also do that's just common sense, which is, okay, mom and dad said you get an hour, and it has to sit on top of this pillow. It can't be directly on your lap. It has to be, put it on the table and look at it. Don't sit it with it directly on your lap. Okay, then you can do that. These are some of these things that we adjust, and we know, and I can guide you through this because these things matter. So this is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority. This one's in the books, and if you want to get a hold of me, the number is 734-985-5891, and I look forward to hearing from you. And till next week, bye-bye, everybody.